Hello, future bestsellers. Welcome to today's live stream writing sprints. We are super excited. Robert has not made his way in yet, but we are expecting him to show up anytime. And as always, with me is the lovely and talented Michelle Schusterman.
Hello.
Michelle, tell our fine friends all about you and your awesome channel today.
All right. I'm Michelle Schusterman. I write young adult and middle grade novels, and my YouTube channel is Writing Workshops, Traditional Publishing Chat, and Writing Vlogs.
Thank you very much. Always good. Always good. I'm Lisa Daly. This is my actually we're simulcasting on my channel and Michelle's channel. So if you're here, you probably at least know one of us. And I write contemporary romance and nonfiction advice. And on my channel, we talk about how to write a book you're super proud of and get it published. So we were just talking about today being Valentine's Day backstage. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. We love you. Um, and how, like, for me, like Valentine's Day for years was like my busiest day of the year. It was like tax season for dating experts because I would always do like a ton of interviews. And sort of in my heyday, well, not even just that, like for years, I would do like, I don't know, between 50 and 100 interviews in like a 48-hour period.
Mm.
And which is so many.
Wow.
And so, right, I feel like I have a little Valentine's Day PT. Now I do not do anywhere near that. This is actually the first year when I'm not doing any interviews, which is kind of amazing. But I, but I still have a little Valentine's Day PTSD, even though, I am a romance author and I do love the love. So let's say hi to our friends in the chat. Lasonda's here. Happy Valentine's Day. We're so glad to see you guys. Michelle's like, what day is it?
Did not have a clue.
No, I totally feel that. Devin's here. Hello, Devin. So glad to see you. Lainey's here. Happy Heart Day to you. Victoria's here. Oh my gosh, we are super glad to see all you guys. Daisy's here. Loretta's here. Oh my gosh, guys. Mary Putnam is here. Happy VD. We love you too. Aw, thank you so much. Loretta's here. Hi, Terry. Oh, I love that. Very nice. Very nice. I forgot. I forgot until the app reminded me. We're so glad that you made it. Very nice. Ooh, I love this question. I love this question. I have a ready answer.
Oh,
I
please.
feel like, oh yeah. All right, you guys, this is question number 1 in the chat today. What is your worst ever Valentine's Day present? Here's mine. And I have this at the ready because I literally talked about it. Like I made a joke about it in a book one time. I talked about it for years on all those many Valentine's Day interviews that I used to do. My worst Valentine's Day gift ever was a green plastic phone. I did not need a phone. I did not ask for a phone. It didn't match anything I had. It was his favorite color, but it was like an old school like phone, like you
Okay.
plug into the wall. I don't think I even had like phone service at that time. I think I just had like phone. It was a phone. That's my
And,
worst gift ever.
sorry, was it the horror geek?
No, God. No, he actually gives pretty good gifts. I'm trying to think of he wouldn't do that. He thinks everything to death. He would not get me anything that was not extremely well thought. And even if I didn't love it, there would be like a whole thought process under it where you would just love the idea even if you didn't love the gift.
Yeah.
So, no, this was a guy I dumped shortly after the gift. It was like it wasn't so much of that. It was just like you're just like you don't really know me and you don't care to. And so I just was like, yeah, that's like if this is like your first Valentine's Day gift, then what it's only going to go downhill from
Right.
there. Right?
That's
Yeah.
finger bad things to come.
Robert Jones is here with us today. We were talking about, so Loretta has kicked us off with a great question for today, which is what is your worst Valentine's Day ever? So I was saying that mine was worst Valentine's Day present ever. And I was saying that mine was a gift from an ex-boyfriend that I dumped not very long after Valentine's Day, not just because of the phone, but because of other phone-like activities. Uh, and yeah, so did I break up with him? Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I don't know. Like, I never really figured that. I mean, again, because I broke up with him a couple months later after that. You know what? I'll tell you why I broke up with him. And it was the right thing. It wasn't just the phone. No. So I don't talk about this a ton, but my brother passed away when he was very young. He was like 26. And he was in an accident. And I was dating this guy, this joker, when that happened.
Oh,
And
boy.
about a week, so my brother died over, and it's been a long time ago, so we don't have to have like a mourning break. But thank you for all your good wishes. I love you guys. Okay, so my brother dies, and he died over Thanksgiving weekend, and we were planning to have like a Super Bowl party, I think. We never had it. I broke up with him before that. But like right after Christmas, he just like looks at me and he says like, "You're just not as much fun anymore." It was literally a month after my brother died. And I was like, get out. Get out. You're the worst boyfriend ever. Like, get out. And then later he called me and he was like, "Are we still going to have the Super Bowl party?" And I was like,
God.
"No, we are not."
That's not even just bad boyfriend. That's just a bad human.
Bad human.
Grieving person, you're not fun anymore.
I know. Right after your brother dies. I know. It was terrible. That was it. He was cute though, but he wasn't going to last. But
No.
yeah. I did. I don't remember if I gave the phone back. I know. I will say that it has been comic fodder for me for a really long time.
Yes.
All right. Ooh, worst present. I was a home cooked Cornish hen dinner for my boyfriend. It looked great, but it was frozen solid in the center. But see, like with that, I go, that's the thought. That's a thought that counts. You're trying to make a beautiful dinner, and I get sometimes these things happen. Morning. Okay. Loretta, my worst was a hammer. I forgot why, but he mansplained to me why I should like it. Consequently, it was over the next day. Can I say a hammer? It's hammer time. You know what's funny is that my crazy Aunt Jerry, and we call her that, like that's been her nick. She literally signs like birthday cards crazy or crazy Aunt Jerry. She's a good kind of crazy though. So from the time I was like 18, my aunt would buy me tools every year for Christmas. Like a drill. I got like a drill for my 18th birthday. And then and a whole tool chest and hammers and blah blah blah. And I will say that as I have gone through my life, I really do appreciate it. And I have a really nice tool set. I have like a saw and the whole deal, right? But but I was interested in those things. I like to fix things. I like to make things. I like to, so for me and for Aunt Jerry, like her, she's like super feminist and like every woman should know how to use a drill kind of a person. But for me, that would be like a great thing. But if you're like, I don't need a hammer, just like I don't need a green phone. And they're trying to, I don't know. A gift should be about what you like and what you like, some expression of love. Anyway, RC is here, black-hearted RC today. We are super glad to see you. Maz is like, dump the whole guy. So, right? I know, how sad. Yeah, he was. Thank you very much. It's been a really long time now. So it's like one of those things where we could joke. Yeah, he was cute. He was cute. That's why he made it through. I think he was a really good boyfriend unless there was some sort of difficulty or in any way. And also he was a terrible gift giver, like awful. Yeah. It's not supposed to be just a good present, but one that shows love. This is the thing I used to always say when I was a dating expert back in the day. I would say you can either spend a lot of money or you can put a lot of thought into it. And what we want is for someone to put a lot of thought into it, to say like, I really love you. I really want you to know that. And I know you. And that's all we're looking for. But we will settle for jewelry. if you cannot pull that off. And but what people want is to know that like they're known and they're loved, and yeah, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Regina's here. Good morning. Having some coffee today. Oh, Mary got a lovely gift once, but it made me cry because the 24 red roses were sent from a wonderful, gorgeous guy thousands of miles away. And then I feel bad for feeling sorry for myself. That's the worst. Long distance relationships are so hurty. Yes, right? God, I know, like, I always feel like the people who are out getting like the dregs of the Valentine's Day gifts on the, stopping by CVS on the way home at 6 o'clock on Valentine's Day night. Like, I don't know. Anyway, so let's talk about books today. I'm very excited about that. Let's go ahead and do our 5-minute warm up as we've been chit chatting now for 15 minutes. But before we do that, Robert Jones has joined us. Robert, tell us a little about you and your awesome channel before we hop over to our sprints.
Well, my channel, as most of you know, is The Story Detective, where I take various forms of storytelling and put it under my Sherlockian microscope and break down the craft to make the viewer's journey easier. And yes, I am working on video ideas, which should be out by April. Fingers crossed.
Yay! That is awesome. All right, let's go ahead and do a 5-minute warm up sprint. Let us know 2 things. What are you working on today? And do you have a terrible Valentine's Day gift to share? And we could go like, I'm trying to think of like the best Valentine's Day gift I ever got. That might be a good thing too. I don't know. I'm not trying to think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and do our 5-minute warm-up sprint. Get ourselves into the zone as far as writing. Get your document open. Get your smoothie or your caffeine or whatever you need this morning to get rolling. Here we go, everybody. Sorry, I have to reorient myself. We are going to get started with our very first 5-minute sprint, starting in 3, 2, 1. Let's do this. All right, we are back. Let me get rid of that timer. So, oh, I just got really dark. That was weird. I don't know what, oh, wait, that's odd. Like my temperature, like anyway, sorry, it doesn't really matter, but yeah, that was really weird. So what are you guys going to be working on today? Michelle, what are you working on? We lost Michelle. Hold on. Oh, she's back. Hold on.
I am. I don't know
We're
what
removing
happened.
old Michelle.
Oh, sorry about that.
So,
The Wi-Fi
what are you guys
bro-
going to work on today?
I am hopping around between brainstorming a client thing and my own 2 projects.
Excellent. How about you, Robert? What are you doing today?
I am still editing and working on rewrites. I should be at the end of the first quarter today, if not beyond. Last week was kind of a sketchy week, but so far this week I'm moving ahead like clockwork. So
That's
glad about
good. Oh, nice. Very nice. I just finished a ghostwriting project last night, and I have some other client projects to work on this week, but I'm also trying to finish up my book. Oh, I got Michelle again. Hold on.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. We're just gonna, we can have 9 Michelles in the bullpen. That's okay. The more Michelles, the better. I
Yeah.
think it's always a good thing. So Kim has a great question. I'm talking to my students tonight about world building, and it would be awesome if I could maybe toss them a quote from one or all of you about world building. And of course, I said yes, we would love to talk about world building today. So you guys think about your best world building advice, and we're going to pop that up in the chat for Kim. And let's see, somebody just told me makes sense. Sometimes cute is just not cute enough. Yes, true, so true. So Lainey's going to be working on 2 chapters in her work in progress today. Never been much for Valentine's Day, but my niece made me a lovely card this year. I have always loved Valentine's Day. And then I, like, for a long time, I'm a romance writer, so what would you expect? And a dating former dating expert. But then after talking about it, like, forever, like doing so many interviews about Valentine's Day, it just does not quite have the same. I just don't quite have the same like feeling about. I'm like a lot more sort of low key about it now. So we had decided, the Horror Geek and I decided not to do anything for Valentine's Day except like bring home dinner, because we've had kind of a stressful month, and we're just like, that's our little gift to each other, is to just take a pass on this one, which I think can be kind of a nice thing too. Like it was, yeah, right. Like we're both too tired, and the last thing you want to do is kind of force that thing. All right, so Coffee Live reading Critique Partners' last chapter, emotional roller coaster, love that, and then continuing the draft short romance for their pen name, very nice. Victoria's working on a script for class, yay, Victoria. Kim is working on a poem for a contest. I'm not really a poet, but I love this. You know what? I think that there's some, like, I think that can sort of stimulate new parts of your brain when you're working on writing in different kinds of formats, whether that's like songwriting or parody or, a short story, if you typically do full length books, that kind of thing. Maz is still editing the I cannot talk today, guys. Unreliable narrator novel. Say that 3 times fast. Slow going, but it's going. That's really good. Oh, my mother loves holidays. I do too. I'm such a nerd. I feel like I'm like your mom a little bit. Like I say like, oh, we're not going to do anything for Valentine's Day. I still did get my kids like, big bags of chocolate and goodies. So she's got big heart balloons in our living room with chocolates and strawberry heart cake in the fridge. Aw, I love your mom. That's awesome. I always like to see the new world through the eyes of a main character, because it serves double duty. I learn about the world, but also the character's attitudes, perceptions, reactions to it. That is, that's really great. That's really great. All right. So we are going to get started, you guys, with our first 20-minute writing sprint. And when we come back, we are going to talk a little bit about world building and some advice on that. So if you guys have some helpful tips on world building, that would be great. All right, contemporary romance. So my world is that I'm primarily in is Sarasota, which and like all types of Sarasota parts that used to exist that don't anymore, imaginary parts and real parts. But I think that the sort of fundamentals of world building apply whether you are writing fantasy or horror or romance or anything else. So we'll talk about that when we come back today. All right, here we go. Let's go ahead and do that 20-minute writing timer. Dun, dun. All right, everybody. So I'm super excited today. I always feel like super motivated after I finish a new project. But because I finished it sort of late yesterday, I did not like kind of set out my to-do list for today. And so that's the first thing I'm going to do this morning to get organized. Okay, here we go, everybody. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Let's sprint, make it count. All right. Very nice. So glad to see you guys back. How did everybody do on that last sprint?
Good.
Yay.
Sorry for all
All
the internet problems, though. I got off the Wi-Fi and tethered to my phone, so it should be more stable now.
It was kind of funny because it like makes this little like bloop noise when you leave or come back. And a lot of times I didn't, I was writing, so I didn't notice you had frozen until you came back in.
Yeah.
So it was kind of funny. But then I go like, oh, there are two Michelles. So we got some great comments on world building. And I was thinking about, I wrote down some notes when we went on the sprint break. So let me just pop this. So Maz says, I'll sometimes have characters chat to each other about a topic to see if it reveals more about the world if I'm struggling. Michelle had some great world building advice. Every time you create something new, a setting, a spell, a creature, ask yourself, why does this matter? As in, how does it serve the plot, the main character's arc? Why is this piece of the world essential to the story? Victoria, I thought this was really great. The chapter I just read talked about your characters in the world being either natives, tourists, or colonizers, which I think is a really good way to sort of look at that. And there you go. Kim says, great advice. Fantastic. Robert, do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I've got a lot. I've got some world building, actually. And I would say start with, well, whether you start with character or plot, think of your world in terms of how it's going to affect the character. Think about, the politics, the land, how they survive. Are they people who have to live off the land? Are there businesses? Do they trade? Do they barter? All that stuff. But how does it affect your characters' fears, their wants? They kind of have to balance one another out, and it has to make your character's journey difficult. All the problems are going to be around that world as well as the characters, because the world supports the characters and the villains and their agendas. So
Excellent. Really good advice. I think that I would just jump off of what you just said, because I like using a religion or a government entity to sort of impact the characters can be a really powerful way to do that. If you think about, there's always somebody in charge, and maybe it's a religious organization, maybe it's a government organization, maybe it's some sort of like a cartel or something, but just looking at how those types of organizations within your societal structure of your world impact your characters. I think probably for me, the first thing that I want to figure out when I'm figuring out world building is, what does your society in your world value the most, and what do they value the least? So if you're thinking about, like, in our society, right? Are they valuing warriors the most? Is it celebrities? Is it people who do magic? Is it, where do your characters fit in that society, and where do the other what are the society's values? And I think that is like a really good place to start.
yeah.
And then the other thing, I think that this is something I'd heard years ago, and I think it's so smart, and people fail to do it, but it's sort of simple. And that is, you want to make sure that you're not using real world idioms in your fictional world. Obviously, if you're doing a contemporary romance in Sarasota, then it's perfectly fine to use real world idioms. But if you're creating like a fantasy world, you don't want to say something, you don't want to have your character saying something that would not have that we wouldn't say in that world. And I think a really good example of not doing this is like Game of Thrones, where the characters would often thank the old gods in the new. Like that was sort of just like recurring thing, where they, like, instead of saying thank God when something happens, they'd say, oh, thank the old gods and the new. And so that sort of language makes your world more unique.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, like, when we talked about, I had mentioned earlier that I set all my books in Sarasota. which is, a place I know and love. And I think that's something, even if you are creating a a completely fictional world, to have some things that are rooted in geography or situations that you're familiar with. Going back to Game of Thrones again, a lot of what happens in those books is taken from all the sort of royal battles in Europe, back in the day. And I think that's part of why, even though the world is much different and obviously dragons didn't really exist and all of that, I think that's part of why all of that feels so real, is that you're taking something real and then just really embellishing it for the
Mhm.
purpose of having this like phenomenal story.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Well, I agree with that. The thing about idioms and the things that we do here on Earth, there's a lot in things like Star Trek and Star Wars. One might be a long time ago, there are past ancestors, and another is in the future. But it still bugs me when, like, George Lucas does something where they're on this other world and there's this diner with aliens and the little robot rolling around on the wheel, and it looks like a 1950s kind of retro diner. Be more original than that. They need to have-
That's funny that you say that, because I like the idea of like a 50s diner on some random plant. You know what I mean? Like, to me, that, like, I don't know, it's fun, but also I'm not as deep into that world as you are.
It's fun. I get that it's fun, and I get the fact that, this could be something that we passed on, from a long time ago in another world, and we're developing the same things in ours. So they can kind of get away with it in stories like that. And I understand the fun of it, but, um, think about how they might eat in public, or what they're using for trade if they go to some place like a diner or a
Right? How do
restaurant.
they pay?
Yeah.
In little gold bits or feathers or your galactic MasterCard? Like, how do you do that? Hey, Robert, would you move your mic closer to your adorable face, please? Thank you. So we can hear you a little
Yeah,
better.
this thing keeps dropping because I got it unbalanced.
That's
Oh,
that's the
Hold on.
worst. That's
It's like
the
oh my
worst.
God. Um, but yeah, maybe they do, depending on their class or their society and their place in it, maybe they don't even eat at home. Maybe there is a group feeding time where there's almost like a place in their town where they go and they serve up whatever they're
Like I don't know
serving.
why this popped into my head, like a pig trough, like
Yeah, yeah.
once a day or twice a day. I don't know how often you feed pigs. Probably twice a day at least, I would think. Like a dog, right? I don't know. If we have anyone with specialized pig knowledge, if you could let me know. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. I have to look that up on the internet. I love that. I think that's all good. Another thing is, one of the things I really love to do is start my books in media res, which is basically starting in the middle of the action. And I think that with world building, there's especially if it's a fantasy world building, that there's a sort of desire to like explain everything about the world right off the bat. And you really like, nobody wants to read that much exposition ever. But I think also that it works better if you're just sort of dropping in those little bits of, whether it's in dialogue or just a little bit of setting, and I think that sort of goes along with what you'd actually said earlier about having anything you're creating something new, you're doing it with intention. Like, why does this matter? How is this pushing the story forward, and how does it impact it? And I think you don't have to do that. I always thought Harry Potter did like such a nice job of introducing those magical elements a little bit until you're like fully, into this entirely magical world, that you get these little drips and drops and you're seeing it through Harry's eyes as he is experiencing it for the first time, which is another really good way to do it. If you're showing this brand new world through the eyes of a tourist.
right.
Mhm.
Let's see. Ma says one of the books I was reading suggested not to go too far because you don't want to have to explain that a Smurf is a sheep constantly and so on. I guess it's getting a balance. Yeah. Unless Smurfs are relevant to the story, I'd probably just skip them,
Yeah.
or or right. You really don't, right, unless you don't want to have to explain what Smurfs are, and but God, for God's sakes, I'm never going to be able to get that word out of my head now. So you're gonna, your Smurfs. Um, yeah, unless there's like a giant Smurf festival and everyone's getting ready for the giant battle of the Smurf festival. Like, do we worship the Smurfs? Like, are they like, are they revered like cows in some parts of the country? I was going to say, is it India that has like a special reverence for cows? Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say that. And I was like, if I'm wrong, people are going to be like, what is she talking about? I thought it was cows in India, and I just want to double check. Yeah. So if you, right. Is there like a Smurf show that happens every year after, on Thanksgiving morning? Do they have like the Smurf Fest, or like, so if it's relevant to the story, if there's going to be a battle royale in the middle of a Smurf field, then yes. If not,
Plus,
you'd
if they live on a world where, say, they're on a farm and they're raising whatever they have as cattle, that's normal to them. They're not going to stop and explain to the reader, this is like cows in your world. We're going to get it through the actions that
right,
these are animals that they're raising for food or milk or whatever.
right. Or we revere them, and we know this by the way that we brush them, brush their fur every half hour, or give them treats, or they have some exalted position in the home, or whatever it is. So any of those weird things you can introduce. You don't have to introduce them all at once, and I think that's really important with world building. You do not, like, you can experience, the reader can experience it in the same way that the character does. You do not have to, they don't need to know everything about the world before they get started. Devin says, when I have to go feed my friends' farm animals, they get fed twice a day, but if they're good piggies, they make it a treat in the middle. So like Odie, basically, right? He has like his little snack plate where he has like dry food all day, but then he gets like his wet food with this Metamucil. Did you know you could give dogs Metamucil if they have stomach issues? You can. My neighbor told us, and I was like, that is crazy. And I was worried I'd be poisoning my dog, but no, things have never been better. So if you have any problems, Metamucil for dogs. Having lived in Wales, I hesitated saying all hail the sheep. Love, 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 love. Well, I hope that provided you with some good info, Kim. Let us know if you're looking for something else. I think it's time to do another sprint, though.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Let's get this right up on the screen. All right, everybody, this is our second sprint of the day. We are feeling good. We are going to be super productive this one. Here we go. Stretch those little fingers. It's time to roll. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Let's cha-cha. All right, here we go. Very nice. All right. Let me just grab this little timer and get that rolling again. All right. So, interesting question, which I will pop up on the other. Once I get rid of this one, here we go. So, our third question that we got today was, do you always have to have a villain?
Interesting.
I know, right?
I
It's
mean,
a
well, Louis, should we just jump into answering it?
yeah. Let's jump into answering it.
I mean, like on the one hand, you always need an antagonist, but your antagonist doesn't always need to be a person.
Mm-hmm. True.
About like movies in the 90s and 2000s, we had like this onslaught of movies that were all about big weather disasters, like asteroids are going to hit the earth and Twister and
Did you see Twister's coming back?
I did. I'm very curious because I feel like the original is very much like a time capsule. It works so great, but it's also very of its
Mm-hmm.
have thoughts. I'm not sure about this new one, but I love the original. But like the tornado is the antagonist.
Right.
There's
right.
conflict between the characters, but ultimately, like that's
It's the tornado. It's beating the tornado. Yeah, I don't think you always need an antagonist. You do not need a villain, because sometimes your antagonist just is a perfectly nice person who just has goals that are opposing your main character, your protagonist's goals. And so they don't, in fact, I think it can be a more nuanced and complex story if the other person isn't necessarily bad. Like it is fun to write the evil Dr. Evil character,
of course.
but yeah, you don't have to have, you do need to have someone who pushes up against your protagonist, forces them to grow, forces them into a scenario where they have to complete their story arc, right? That's the antagonist's job. But they do not have to be evil. They can just be somebody who has opposing goals. And this is one of the things I love about enemies to lovers romance, because a lot of times it's because they're enemies because they're competing for the same job or they want the same thing, which actually ends up making, and then they have to work together, and then they realize they have a lot in common and all of that, right? Let's take just a swoon break for a second. So I love enemies to lovers, love it. But generally speaking, that's a really good way of showing that your antagonist does not necessarily have to be an evil person. And in romance, you have to make them kind of seem evil, but then at the end you have to realize, like, oh, they were really sweet the whole time. And they gave up the big job so she could have it. But she was going to get it anyway because she earned it. God damn it. All right. So there's that. All right. So Lainey says, I definitely don't in most of my rom-coms, but there is always a thing that is wrong. Yes. Not a villain, maybe not a villain, Vixen says, but some kind of conflict, unless it's just a pure cozy. But even in a cozy, you have to have, right? You have to have something. Yeah. You have to have something to do.
John Truby calls it. He refers to the villain as an opponent. It can be your own family members of the own team. It could be your own inner struggles, which is more difficult to do. That's more literary novel, but there's always somebody looking out for your best interest, or even most villains believe that they are doing what's right.
They're doing the right thing for them. But it's not necessarily selfish. They might just have that's like two different scientists might have completely opposing ideas on how to solve global warming, right? They both have an altruistic motive, but maybe one idea bumps up against or makes the other idea impossible. You can't both do it. And so you have this sort of natural competition in here. I love this question. Whether or not Frozen has two protagonists, or if Elsa was the antagonist.
Yeah,
I have a thought on this. What do you got? I think Elsa is the antagonist.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. And I think it's interesting. I like there's a lot of debate about this within people who really love Disney movies, because Disney has over the years like really turned away from creating a classic villain in their movies. And like, okay, I love Encanto. I thought it was absolutely fantastic, but it has led to this rise of the villain is generational trauma. And I think like the people I listen to and kind of agree with, it's like, okay, we're kind of tired of this now. Can we get like our Ursulas and Jafars and Scars, like just these classic villains who are just doing evil? Because that's fun
Right.
too, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess we do need both, but I love a classic villain personally. So
I agree. I agree. Like, yes, I think there's room for all types of stories, but in particular with Disney, and this is interesting. I was just talking with one of my coaching clients this morning about how how like sometimes we end up getting um, like you have authors that'll write all different kinds of books, and sometimes their readership is confused, and I think that this applies to Disney as well,
mhm.
because we are used to a certain kind of villain from Disney and a certain type of story.
Yeah,
Good triumphs over evil and all of this, and with something like generational trauma, it's really hard for good to triumph over evil in that
right.
kind of scenario. And so those kinds of stories are a little off brand for
Yeah.
Disney. Yeah.
It's surprising, and I think that was part of why it worked with Encanto, because it was one of their first films that did it so explicitly. And I
Mhm.
a thing about that film. I thought it was really beautiful and perfect. But I feel like Disney itself and other companies, especially that make like animated films, have really been trying to copy that formula over and over again.
Mhm.
It's not, it doesn't always feel as authentic. And sometimes it
Mhm.
just feels like this story didn't really have a villain. It was just a family that needed to learn to get along or whatever, or like
Right.
the beginning,
Right.
Yeah.
which isn't as exciting.
It's not as exciting as like right, either that or some sort of situation that everyone has to pull together to overcome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I think especially in my Disney movies, I do like a good villain. I do
Well,
like
that
a good
question
villain.
goes back to my next piece of advice, which was advice that I got from Saul Stein, who said, "Don't think of your story as having a villain. Think of it as having two protagonists. Even if
Hmm.
one is
Mhm.
arguably evil, they are still two protagonists competing for the goal, whatever it is."
Right. Yeah.
But if your story doesn't have any sense of danger and it just sort of ambles along, they're all killing one another with kindness, you're probably going to kill your story.
Right. You're definitely going to kill your reader's attention span. That's for sure. I think this is interesting. So Victoria says like the sort of the group opinion was that she was the antagonist, but it was a surprisingly heated discussion. I love that. That's the kind of discussion we should be having in writing classes. And the truth is that it doesn't really matter the way that I mean, I mean, obviously the writer could tell us like, did I see this person as a second protagonist or as an antagonist? But but it's an example of sort of a softer antagonist where she is their goals are opposed, which is why they have all this conflict in the beginning, but they ultimately, want the same thing, which is for poor Elsa to not have to live all by herself and to be able to fulfill her queenly duties. So, and for
Yep.
everybody to have their happily ever after and lots of ice skating. Okay. So, but yeah, I can totally see, I can see how that argument could go both ways,
Yeah,
actually.
for sure.
All right, guys, let's go on our third sprint. Is that only our third? Hold the phone.
It is.
Is
Yes.
it? It doesn't feel like like usually I can tell if we've been extra gabby, but I feel like we've been taking care of business pretty well today. So,
Yeah, for sure.
all right. So let's go ahead. We're going to do our last sprint. We are going to make this one count. You guys have got this. Right like the wind. Here we go. All right, everybody. This is a big one. Starting in 3, 2, 1. The fate of the world is in your hands. All right, fantastic. So, how'd you guys do on that last sprint?
Good.
Very nice, very nice. How about you, Michelle? Oh, hold on, I think I muted you. Oh, I just unmuted you and then muted you again. My sorry.
No worries. Good. I'm almost done with the first chapter of my thriller. Yay!
Yay, that's fantastic. I feel like I have been, even though I did not really do any writing today, I feel very productive because, like I said, I finished a big project last night and I needed to get organized this morning to get going on my next client project. So, yeah, anyway, so I've just lots of stuff going on today. We've got some friends dropping in. Hello, Heather. Very good to see you. Happy Valentine's Day. 1,000 great books. We're super glad to see you today. I'm sorry. But you can always watch the replay. So there you go. Very nice. And Victoria was saying lots of ice skating. Yes. For Frozen. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that was our last question for the day. How are you guys? I'm sort of curious on this because I think you guys saw last week. Was it last week? I think you guys saw last week on the stream that we had a baby visitor.
Yes.
And that sort of blew up my January. In a delightful way, but an unexpected way. And so and I'm always like, I love January. Like, I love that like running start. I usually take off in December because, you know, book PR is dead. Like the media is on vacation and, you know, family, I always want to do that. So I'm curious as to how everybody's New Year's resolutions as far as your writing career stuff how are they like before we go today, let's talk about this. Like, because now we're mid-February. Are we on track? I am not on track. I will say February is my new January. How about you guys?
I think, yeah, I set too big of New Year goals. I got like over the holidays, I got way over ambitious. Typical for me. But I kind of reassessed midway through January, and now I feel like I'm on track. I'm
Now you're
working
on track.
on my own books a little bit every day, and I'm keeping up with YouTube and enjoying it more than I was. So I feel like I am on track. Yeah.
That's good. That's very good. How about you, Robert?
Well, last year I started January like I hit the ground running, and then by February I slowed down, and then I kind of evened off as the year went on. This year I hit like a slow but steady pace. There were some weeks that I didn't get that much done, but I moved forward, and I think February has gradually picked up. So I would rather have that than like the January.
You'd rather have like an upward trajectory. You'd be trending upward rather than trending down. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I feel that. You guys let us know how you did in the chat. I want to know how your sprints went today. Kim, I'm super glad you made great progress. Aw, thank you so much. We are so happy to hear that. Very nice. Very nice. We're very glad. We're glad you came today, and we hope you come back. 1,000 great books. I've been stuck on the last 20% of my book for a while now. Yesterday I wrote a bunch and felt better. And now I think it's good to keep writing, if only to find out what does not work. Yeah, right? It's that old, like the only way around is through. So yeah, keep doing that. Usually for me, by the time I get to the last 20% of the book, like 15 to 20%, that's like my favorite because I feel like it just flows out of me. So I think you're smart to stick with it since you're struggling right there, because there's probably something that's hanging you up. But I think the closer you get to the end, the more obvious that thing will be.
Right.
Yeah. Heather is also having February as January. It's a little bit like having dessert for dinner. February is January, but it works. We can make that happen. Yeah, I had to do a redo because I was quite ambitious. Now I'm trying to be unrealistic. I've had big years where I'm like super ambitious and I get it all done, but not last year.
Right.
And this year I'm off to this year I'm sort of medium ambition level. I'm not as like trying to go crazy like I did last year, but I do have quite a few projects I want to get finished this year. And I'm not off to a great start because my January got derailed a little bit, but I am actually feeling very good about my February. So it helps when you finish a big project because you feel like,
My gosh, yeah.
okay, right? That's off my back. Now I can finish this other one. So yeah, it feels a lot
Yep.
better. Yay. All right, fantastic. Uh Oh, I think I already did Vixen. All right, guy. Aw, thanks, Lainey. You're the best. All right, guys, let's go ahead and do our outros today, and we're going to start with Robert since well, we're just going to start with Robert since he's awesome and we love him. Aw,
I appreciate that. Well, my channel is The Story Detective, and I take various forms of storytelling, put it under my Sherlockian microscope, from my time at Marvel with sequential art to narrative art and writing, and break down the craft and give it to the viewer and make your journey hopefully an easier one. And as I said, videos are coming. That's in the plan. That's part of what I'm working on. So we'll see by April.
all right, we're counting on you. We're counting on you, Robert. Michelle, tell us a little about you and your awesome channel before we go.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm Michelle Schusterman. I write young adult and middle grade novels, and my channel is writing workshops, blogs, and traditional publishing chat.
Thank you so much both for being here today. I'm Lisa Daly. I write contemporary romance and nonfiction advice, and I'm a book coach for 7-figure authors, which is kind of a cool gig. In any case, on my channel, we talk about how to write a book you're super proud of and get it published, and we do writing sprints every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern. And I hope you guys will be here with us next week because we will be here once again, trying to get it all done. All right, everybody. Well, thanks so much for being here today. We will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
And remember to keep those keyboards clacking.
That's right.